The alarm screamed through the bridge of the Voyager's dawn. Ryan Cole looked up from his engineering console, his hands frozen over the controls. The sound meant one thing. Someone was dying out there in the black. Captain Helen Grant stood from her chair, her gray hair pulled back tight. She was 53 years old and had seen more space disasters than she cared to remember. Her face showed nothing as she read the emergency signal. "It's a Velari ship," she said quietly. "Their royal flagship. Reactor failure." Ryan felt his heart speed up. The Velari were not enemies, but they were not friends either. Humans and Velari had fought over territory for years. Now there was peace, but it was thin peace, like ice that could crack at any moment. "How long do they have?" Ryan asked. 15 minutes. Maybe less. Captain Grant's jaw was tight. "Their military fleet is 10 minutes out." Ryan understood immediately. By the time help arrived, everyone on that ship would be dead. 300 Velari souls, including their queen. He pulled up the technical readout on his screen, his eyes moving fast over the numbers. He knew this failure pattern. He had seen it before on human ships. The reactor was eating itself from the inside, building toward an explosion that would vaporize everything within 1,000 kilometers. "We need to stay back," Captain Grant said. She did not look at Ryan. "If we approach and their fleet arrives, it could start a war. They might think we attacked them." Ryan stared at the numbers on his screen. 15 minutes. He could see the solution in his mind, could see exactly what needed to be done. It would take 12 minutes if everything went perfect, 13 if he made one mistake. He thought about his sister. Karen had died in a mining accident when Ryan was 21. He had been off-planet, unable to help, unable to save her. He remembered the crushing weight of that helplessness, the way it still woke him up some nights. "Captain," Ryan said slowly. "I can fix it." Grant turned to look at him. Her eyes were sad and knowing. She had served with Ryan for 5 years. She knew what he was thinking. "No," she said simply. "I can reach them in 3 minutes with a maintenance shuttle. I can stabilize their reactor. I know how, and if you fail, you start a war. If you succeed, you might still start a war." Captain Grant shook her head. "I can't authorize this, Ryan. I'm sorry." Ryan looked at the countdown on his screen. 14 minutes now. He thought about 300 people burning to death in a reactor explosion. He thought about their families. He thought about his sister. He stood up. "I'm not asking for authorization," Ryan said quietly. He walked off the bridge before Captain Grant could stop him. Behind him, he heard her curse softly. But she did not order security to grab him. Helen Grant was a good captain, and she knew when rules needed to bend. Ryan ran through the corridors of the Voyager's dawn. His mind was already working through the steps he would need to take. The maintenance shuttle was in Bay 3. It was small, fast, and had basic tools. It would have to be enough. 2 minutes later, Ryan was strapped into the shuttle's pilot seat. His hands moved over the controls automatically, built from years of training. The bay doors opened, and the black of space yawned before him. The Velari flagship hung in space like a dying star. It was beautiful, all elegant curves and silver metal that caught the light of distant suns. But Ryan could see the damage. Parts of the hull glowed red. Atmosphere was venting from a dozen ruptures. His radio crackled. "It was Captain Grant. "Ryan, you stubborn fool," she said. Her voice was rough with emotion. "Make it count." "I will," Ryan promised. He pushed the shuttle to maximum speed. G-forces pressed him back into his seat. The Velari ship grew larger in his viewport, filling his vision with burning metal. Ryan brought the shuttle into the flagship's hangar bay, with a hard landing that scraped metal on metal. Sparks flew. The gravity was failing inside the ship, making everything feel wrong and tilted. He grabbed his emergency kit and ran. The corridors of the Velari ship were beautiful even in their death. The walls were carved with patterns that seemed to move in the flickering lights. But Ryan had no time to appreciate them. He followed the reactor readings on his portable scanner. Down 3 levels, through a corridor filled with smoke, past Velari crew members who stared at him in shock. A human here in their dying ship. Ryan reached engineering and stopped. The room was chaos. Velari engineers were working desperately at controls that sparked and smoked. And in the center of it all stood a figure that made Ryan's breath catch. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with scales that shimmered violet and silver. Her eyes were large and gold, with pupils that were slits like a cat's. She wore robes that marked her as royalty, but her hands were on the reactor controls alongside her engineers. Queen Zara Thiel of the Velari Empire. Ryan recognized her from news broadcasts. She was young for a queen, only 28, but she carried herself with absolute authority. Her head turned as Ryan entered. Her eyes went wide with shock. For a moment, everyone in engineering froze. "Who are you?" Zara demanded in perfect English. Her voice was musical but hard with stress. "Lieutenant Commander Ryan Cole, Human Engineering Corps," Ryan said quickly. He pulled out his scanner. "I can fix your reactor." "I need 7 minutes. You should not be here," Zara said. But Ryan saw something in her eyes. Hope, maybe, or desperation. "No," Ryan agreed. "But I am here, and I can help." Another explosion rocked the ship. The lights went red. An alarm blared in Velari. Words Ryan did not understand but whose meaning was clear. They were out of time. Zara looked at Ryan for one long second. Then she nodded. "Do it," she said. Ryan moved. His training took over, his body acting on instinct and knowledge built over years. The Velari reactor was different from human designs, but the basic principles were the same. Energy needed to go somewhere. Heat needed to be controlled. He pulled equipment from his kit, human technology incompatible with Velari systems. But Ryan had always been good at making things work that should not work. He jury-rigged connections, bypassed safety systems, created a makeshift heatsink from spare parts. Zara watched him work. She asked questions in her musical voice, understanding what he was doing faster than most humans could. She was brilliant, Ryan realized. Not just a queen by birth, but someone who truly understood the technology that powered her ship. They worked side by side. When Ryan needed a tool, Zara handed it to him before he asked. When she needed a readout translated from human systems, Ryan gave it to her. They moved together like they had done this 100 times before. 5 minutes in, a bulkhead collapsed. Metal screamed and fell, blocking the exit. They were trapped in engineering with the dying reactor and no way out. Zara's scales flashed dark blue. Ryan understood it was fear, though her face showed nothing. "Why did you come?" she asked quietly, still working at the controls. "You risk war between our peoples." Ryan did not look up from his work. His hands moved steadily, connecting wires and rerouting power. "Some things matter more than politics," he said simply. Zara turned to look at him. Really look at him. Not at a human, not at a potential enemy, but at a person who had risked everything to save strangers. "You are a strange man." "Ryan Cole," she said softly. "I get that a lot," Ryan replied, and despite everything, Zara laughed. It was a beautiful sound, musical and genuine. 7 minutes. Ryan made the final connection. The makeshift heatsink hummed to life. The reactor's deadly spiral slowed, then stopped, then began to stabilize. They had done it. The engineering crew cheered in Velari. Zara's scales shimmered through a rainbow of colors. Relief, joy, gratitude. Ryan felt the tension drain from his body, leaving him suddenly exhausted. Then the secondary explosion hit. Ryan saw it coming half a second before it happened. A feedback surged through the systems he had just connected. He did not think. He just moved. He threw himself at Zara, covering her body with his own as the control panel exploded. Heat and shrapnel tore through the air where she had been standing. Pain blazed across Ryan's back and side. They hit the floor together. Ryan's vision went gray at the edges. He could smell burning. His burning, he realized distantly. "Ryan." Zara's voice seemed to come from far away. Her hands were on his face, gentle despite her fear. "Ryan, stay with me." He tried to focus on her face. Those golden eyes filled with concern for him. For a human she barely knew. "You're safe," Ryan managed to say. His voice sounded wrong. "That's what matters." Chaos erupted around them. Velari medics rushed in. Someone was cutting through the collapsed bulkhead. Ryan heard human voices. His crew had come for him. He felt himself being lifted onto a stretcher. The pain was incredible now, cutting through the shock. He tried to stay conscious, tried to see if Zara was truly all right. She was there, standing tall despite everything. Her scales had returned to violet, shimmering with silver. She looked like a queen again, powerful and untouchable. But then she did something that made everyone stop. She placed her hand over her heart in a Velari gesture Ryan had seen in training videos. A life debt. An acknowledgement that she owed her life to another. Ryan tried to return the gesture, but his arms would not work right. So he just nodded. Zara's eyes met his across the chaotic engineering bay. In that moment, something passed between them. Understanding, connection, a promise that neither of them fully understood yet. Then the medics were carrying Ryan away. The last thing he saw before, Ryan woke up in a white room that smelled like medicine and recycled air. Every part of his body hurt, but it was the kind of hurt that meant he was alive. The kind of hurt that meant healing had already begun. A nurse appeared at his bedside, checking monitors. She smiled when she saw his eyes were open. "Welcome back, Commander Cole. You've been out for 3 days, 3 days." Ryan tried to sit up and regretted it immediately. The burns on his back and side screamed in protest. The nurse gently pushed him back down. "Easy now. You took serious damage. 2nd and 3rd degree burns over 30% of your body. You're lucky to be alive, the Queen," Ryan managed to say. His voice was rough. "Is she safe?" The nurse's smile widened. "Queen Zarathiel is perfectly fine, thanks to you. You're a hero, Commander." Ryan closed his eyes. Relief washed through him, stronger than the pain. She was safe. That was all that mattered. Over the next 2 weeks, Ryan healed slowly. Captain Grant visited him several times, bringing reports about the political situation. The rescue had created chaos in diplomatic circles. Some called Ryan a hero, others called him reckless. A few hardliners on both sides were trying to use the incident to stir up old conflicts. But the Velari government had officially thanked Ryan and the human military. Queen Zara herself had issued a statement praising his courage. That had shut down most of the complaints. "You're getting a medal," Captain Grant told him one afternoon. She sat in the chair beside his bed, looking tired. "The ceremony is in 2 months. I expect you to be there in full dress uniform, burns or no burns." "Yes, Captain," Ryan said. He paused. "Did I do the right thing?" Grant was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached over and squeezed his hand gently. "You saved 300 lives, Ryan. You prevented a disaster that could have destroyed the peace. Yes, you did the right thing, even if it was also the crazy thing." A week later, Ryan received a message that made his heart stop. It came through official diplomatic channels, encrypted and marked private. From Queen Zarathiel herself. His hand shook slightly as he opened it. The message was not formal or political. It was personal, written in careful English. "Lieutenant Commander Cole, I hope this message finds you recovering well. I have been told about your injuries and I carry guilt for them. You protected me with your own body and I will never forget that. I wanted to thank you properly, not through official statements, but with my own words. What you did was beyond duty or obligation. You risked everything for strangers, for people your government might consider enemies. That kind of courage is rare in this galaxy. I think about our time in that engineering bay often, the way you worked without fear. The way you spoke to me not as a queen, but as another person trying to survive. It has been a long time since anyone has seen me that way. I have attached an image of my meditation garden. It is my favorite place on my homeworld, where I go when I need to remember peace exists. I hope you find it peaceful as well. If you would like to respond, I would enjoy hearing from you again. If you prefer not to, I understand. Either way, you have my eternal gratitude." The message was signed simply with her name. Zara. Ryan stared at the screen for a long time. A queen, the leader of an empire spanning dozens of worlds, had reached out to him personally. Not for politics or duty, but because she wanted to. He opened the attached image. The meditation garden was beautiful. Strange plants with bioluminescent leaves grew in careful patterns around pools of still water. The sky was pale green, lit by 2 small suns. It looked like a place from a dream. Ryan spent an hour crafting his response. He wanted to get it right, to match her honesty with his own. "Your Majesty, thank you for your message. Please do not carry guilt for my injuries. I made my choice freely, and I would make it again without hesitation. Your safety and the safety of your crew were worth any cost. Your garden is beautiful. It reminds me of a place I like to go when I need peace. There is a gas giant visible from my quarters, a massive planet with rings that catch the light. I find it calming to watch. I am honored that you took time to write to me personally. I would very much enjoy corresponding with you if you truly wish it. I have many questions about Velari culture and engineering, and if you ever need someone who will see you as Zara rather than the Queen, I hope you will think of me." He signed it, Ryan, then hesitated and added Commander Cole. He wanted to be respectful, but he also wanted her to know he understood what she had offered, a chance at connection beyond their roles. Her response came 2 days later. It was longer this time, more relaxed. She asked about his recovery and told him about the repairs to her flagship. She asked what he thought about in the moments before the rescue, and he answered honestly. He had thought about not letting anyone else die if he could prevent it. The messages continued. Once a week at first, then twice, then almost daily. They talked about everything. Zara described the loneliness of leadership, how every decision affected millions of lives. Ryan shared his love of solving impossible engineering problems. She told him about Velari poetry. He sent her images of stars he found beautiful. Ryan learned that Zara loved music from all cultures, that she had been crowned at 25 after her father died, that she sometimes felt crushed by the weight of expectations. She learned that Ryan had lost his sister, that he read constantly, that he found humor in dark situations because it helped him cope. They discovered unexpected common ground. Both loved ancient poetry. Both felt trapped by expectations others placed on them. Both wondered what their lives would be like if they were ordinary people who could make choices based on what they wanted rather than what was required. 2 months after the rescue, Ryan found himself thinking about Zara at odd moments. When he saw something interesting, his first thought was to tell her about it. When he faced a challenge, he wondered what her perspective would be. She had become part of his daily life in a way he had not planned or expected. On her side of the galaxy, Zara noticed her scales shimmering with colors her attendants had not seen in years. Silver violet, the color of contentment and hope. She caught herself smiling while reading Ryan's messages, composing responses in her head during tedious diplomatic meetings. Her closest advisor, an elderly Velari named Keshatar, noticed the change. He had served 3 generations of queens and knew Zara better than anyone. "You seem lighter, my queen," he said one afternoon. "It is good to see." Zara looked up from the message she was writing. "Do I?" Keshatar's scales flickered with gentle amusement. "You do. The human who saved you. You correspond with him still?" Zara felt her scales shift slightly, betraying her feelings. "Yes. Is that wrong?" "Wrong? No. Complicated? Perhaps, but happiness is rare for those who wear crowns. If he brings you happiness, that is worth something. But complications were coming." 3 months after the rescue, rumors began circulating. Someone in the diplomatic channels noticed the frequency of messages between the Queen and a human officer. Questions were asked. Suspicions grew. Hardliners in the Velari government started whispering that their queen was compromised. A human had saved her life, and now she was indebted to him. Could her judgment be trusted regarding human relations? On the human side, military intelligence flagged Ryan as a potential security risk. Why was an officer corresponding regularly with an alien head of state? What information might he be sharing? Even if unintentionally? Ryan was called to a meeting with intelligence officers. They sat across from him in a gray room, their faces carefully neutral. "Commander Cole, we need to discuss your communications with Queen Zarathiel." Ryan's stomach tightened. "What about them?" "We understand she reached out to thank you." "That's appropriate. But the correspondence has continued, regularly, for months now." "She's a friend," Ryan said carefully. The intelligence officer leaned forward. "Commander, she's not just a friend. She's the head of a foreign power. We need to know what you discuss. We need to ensure no sensitive information is being shared." Ryan felt anger rising in his chest. "We talk about books, poetry, our lives. Nothing classified, nothing political." Even so, the officer continued, his voice flat. "This relationship presents complications. We're not ordering you to stop, not yet. But we're strongly advising you to reconsider. For your career, for your freedom, for the peace between our peoples." They left the threat hanging in the air. Ryan understood perfectly. Stop talking to Zara or face consequences. Zara faced even worse pressure. Her advisors brought evidence that factions within the Empire were planning to use her connection to Ryan as grounds for removing her from power. A queen who favored aliens over her own people, a leader compromised by sentiment. They could trigger a civil war, one advisor warned. "You must end this correspondence. Publicly distance yourself from the human." Zara sat on her throne, her scales dark with stress. She thought about Ryan's messages, the way he made her laugh, the way he understood the weight she carried. She thought about the possibility of war, of her people dying because she wanted one small piece of happiness for herself. That night, Ryan sat in his quarters, staring at a half-written message to Zara. He thought about the intelligence officers, their thinly veiled threats. He thought about Zara's position, how much harder the pressure must be on her side. He realized something that made his heart ache. By staying in contact, 5 years passed like water through cupped hands, slow enough to feel each moment, fast enough to look back in surprise at how much time had gone. Queen Zarathiel stood on the balcony of her palace, looking out over the capital city of her homeworld. Light stretched to the horizon, millions of lives she was responsible for. 5 years on the throne without Ryan's messages, and she had become the queen everyone needed her to be. She had negotiated 3 major treaties in those years. She had modernized the Vaylari fleet. She had established cultural exchange programs with 6 different species, including humans. Her people respected her. Her enemies feared her. Historians were already calling her one of the great queens, but those closest to her noticed something missing. Zara never formed personal connections anymore. She was professional with everyone, warm when needed, but always keeping a careful distance. Even her advisors, who had served her for years, felt like they were talking to the crown rather than the person wearing it. Keshatar worried about her. He was old now. His scales faded to pale gray with age. He remembered when Zara had been different, when her scales had shimmered with life and feeling. Before the human, before the choice to let him go. "My queen," Keshatar said one evening, finding her alone in her private chambers. "You have achieved so much. Your father would be proud. But are you happy?" Zara turned from the window. Her scales were their usual violet, controlled and neutral. "Happiness is not something queens are promised, Keshatar. Duty is enough, is it?" The old advisor moved closer, his movements slow. "You still keep his patch, don't you?" "The humans." Zara's scales flickered silver for just a moment before she controlled them. "That is different. That is remembering someone who saved my life. Someone who made you laugh," Keshatar said gently. "Someone who saw you as Zara, not the queen. You have not laughed like that since he left." Zara looked away. "What would you have me do?" He made his choice. He left to protect us both. Reopening that wound would help no one, perhaps. But 5 years is a long time to carry a wound unopened. Sometimes healing requires facing what we've tried to forget. Zara said nothing. After Keshatar left, she went to her private vault. Inside, carefully protected, was the name patch. Ryan Cole, Lieutenant Commander. She had not looked at it in months, trying to move forward. But some nights, when the loneliness felt crushing, she still took it out and remembered a human who had seen her as more than a crown. She wondered, not for the first time, where Ryan was now. If he thought of her. If he had found someone else, someone who could be part of his life without complications. The thought made her scales darken with something she refused to name as jealousy. Across the galaxy, Ryan Cole sat in the observation room of Farpoint Station, watching stellar phenomena through reinforced windows. He had left Sentinel Outpost 9 after his year was up, only to volunteer for another remote posting. Then another. 5 years of exile, and he had become someone his old friends barely recognized. He was 37 now, quieter than he used to be, more withdrawn. The young officers at Farpoint thought he was strange, the silent man who spent his free time studying alien languages and technologies. They did not know his history, did not know about the rescue or the queen. Ryan had become an expert in xenotechnology over the 5 years. He studied alien systems obsessively, learning everything he could about different species. It was a way to feel connected to the galaxy he had isolated himself from, and if he spent extra time on Vaylari engineering techs, well, no one needed to know why. His quarters were filled with technical manuals in a dozen languages. He could read Vaylari fluently now, could understand their poetry and literature. Sometimes he read texts Zara had mentioned in her messages 5 years ago, feeling closer to her through the words she had loved. He dated occasionally. A few relationships that lasted weeks or months before ending quietly. The women were nice, smart, attractive, but something was always missing. They did not understand why he had made the choices he made. They could not comprehend the piece of his heart he had left behind with a queen on a distant world. Ryan followed news about the Vaylari Empire when he could. He read about Zara's accomplishments with a mixture of pride and longing. She was doing amazing things, becoming the leader he had always known she could be. He told himself he had made the right choice, that she was better off without him complicating her life. But late at night, when sleep would not come, he activated the holographic projector he still carried. The meditation garden appeared in miniature, glowing softly in the darkness. He would watch the alien plants sway in a breeze that did not exist, and he would remember golden eyes and scales that shimmered with emotion. Both Ryan and Zara had built successful lives on the surface. Zara hosted a major diplomatic summit that brought together species who had been enemies for generations. Ryan published groundbreaking research on cross-species technology integration that became required reading at human military academies. But their accomplishments felt hollow. Something was missing, a piece neither could name to anyone else. They went through the motions of their lives, successful and respected and deeply lonely. Zara developed a habit with human diplomats. She would ask casual questions about their military, steering conversations toward engineering divisions. She never quite asked what she really wanted to know. Where is Ryan Cole? Is he well? Does he ever mention me? But the questions hung unspoken in the air, and sometimes the diplomats seemed to sense them. One human ambassador, a perceptive woman named Lisa Chang, noticed the pattern. After a diplomatic dinner, she approached Keshatar privately. The Queen asks about our military often, engineering divisions specifically. Is there someone she's looking for? Keshtar's scales flickered with something that might have been amusement. That is not my information to share, Ambassador. But if you happen to learn the current posting of a certain lieutenant commander who once saved her life, that information might bring her peace. Ambassador Chang nodded slowly, understanding. She made a note to research Ryan Cole when she returned to human space. Then everything changed. The Krathon Confederacy, a hostile power that had threatened multiple species for decades, launched a surprise attack on a joint human-Velari research colony. The attack was devastating. Thousands died in the initial assault. The colony was destroyed. Years of cooperative research lost. Worse, the weapons used in the attack were sophisticated, clearly designed to target both human and Velari defensive systems. Someone had been studying their technologies, finding weaknesses, preparing for war. The attack sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The fragile peace that had been building for years suddenly felt very fragile indeed. Both human and Velari governments called for an emergency summit to coordinate their response. The location chosen was Unity Point, a massive space station built as a symbol of cooperation between species. It was neutral ground, operated by a coalition of 6 different governments, perfect for sensitive negotiations. Zara agreed to attend personally. It was unusual for a head of state to travel to such meetings, but she wanted to show her commitment to the alliance. She wanted to make clear that the Velari Empire would stand with humans against this threat. When she received the preliminary roster of human attendees, her scales flashed colors before she could control them. Ryan Cole, Lieutenant, Xenotechnology Specialist, Technical Advisory Panel, he would be there. After 5 years of silence, of wondering, of trying to forget, she would see him again. Keshatar found her sitting very still, staring at the roster, her hand pressed to her chest where she once wore his patch beneath her robes. He will be there, she said quietly. Yes, Keshatar replied. He moved to stand beside her. How do you feel about that? Zara was quiet for a long moment. Her scales shifted through colors, violet to silver to blue and back again. Uncertain, hopeful, afraid. I don't know, she admitted. What if he doesn't want to see me? What if he's moved on, found someone else? What if I've built him up in my memory into someone he never really was? Or what if he remembers you as fondly as you remember him? Keshtar suggested gently. What if these 5 years have been as difficult for him as they've been for you? That possibility scared Zara even more. If Ryan had been suffering, if he had wanted to reach out but felt he could not, then they had both spent 5 years in unnecessary pain. The thought made her chest ache. At Farpoint Station, Ryan received his orders to report to Unity Point with a mixture of emotions he could not untangle. He would be part of the technical team analyzing the Krathon weapons. His expertise in xenotechnology made him the obvious choice. When he saw that Queen Zarathiel would be attending, his hand shook. He set down the datapad and walked to the observation window, pressing his forehead against the cool glass. 5 years. 5 years of trying to forget, of telling himself he had done the right thing. And now he would see her again, stand in the same room, breathe the same air. Would she even remember him? Would she want to talk to him? Or would she prefer to maintain professional distance? Maybe she had spent 5 years angry at him for leaving. Maybe she had forgotten him entirely, moved on with her life and her duties. But even as he thought it, Ryan knew it was not true. He remembered the way she had written to him, the honesty in her words, the connection they had built. That was Unity Point was massive, a structure visible from millions of kilometers away. 6 different species had built it together over 20 years, a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. Ryan's shuttle docked 3 days before the summit officially began, giving him time to settle in and prepare his technical reports. He threw himself into work immediately. Analyzing the Krathon weapons data was complex, requiring careful study of attack patterns and damage reports. It was easier to focus on numbers and technical specifications than to think about the fact that Zara was somewhere on this station. His quarters were small but comfortable, with a window looking out at the stars. At night, Ryan would stand at that window and wonder if Zara was looking at the same view from somewhere else on the station. If she was thinking about him at all. Zara arrived the next day with her full diplomatic entourage. The docking bay was filled with officials and press, everyone wanting to capture the moment when the Velari Queen stepped onto Unity Point. She moved through the crowds with perfect composure, her scales a controlled violet, her expression calm and regal. But Keshatar, walking beside her, noticed her scales had not settled. They flickered constantly, shifting through tiny variations of color that betrayed her inner turmoil. She was looking for someone in the crowds, though she would never admit it. That first day passed without them meeting. Ryan stayed in the technical sections, buried in data. Zara attended diplomatic receptions, surrounded by advisors and guards. They moved through the same station like ghosts passing in different dimensions, always just missing each other. The second night, Ryan could not sleep. The walls of his quarters felt too close, the air too thin. He needed space, needed to think. He made his way to one of Unity Point's observation decks, a large room with floor-to-ceiling windows showing the galaxy in all its glory. The deck was empty when Ryan arrived. He pressed his hand against the window, feeling the cold glass against his palm. Somewhere out there was the Velari homeworld. Somewhere on this station was the woman who had not left his thoughts in 5 years. Zara had also found sleep impossible. She had slipped away from her guards, needing a moment alone away from the constant attention. She headed for the observation deck she had noticed during her initial tour. A place to think, to breathe, to be just Zara for a few moments. When the doors opened, she stopped. The deck was not empty. Ryan stood at the far window silhouetted against the stars. She would have known his shape anywhere, even after 5 years. The way he stood, the angle of his shoulders. Her breath caught in her throat. Then, before she could decide whether to leave or stay, the doors locked behind her. A safety protocol triggered by a minor systems malfunction somewhere else on the station. They would be sealed in for at least 20 minutes while technicians worked on the problem. Ryan turned at the sound of the locking doors. And there she was. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They stood on opposite sides of the observation deck, the stars spread out behind them like witnesses to their reunion. Ryan looked older, Zara thought. Lines around his eyes that had not been there 5 years ago. A weariness in the way he held himself. But his eyes were the same, steady and kind, and looking at her with an expression she could not quite read. Zara looked different too, Ryan realized. More regal, more controlled. She carried herself with absolute authority, every movement deliberate and graceful. But her scales, those beautiful scales, were locked in a neutral violet that felt wrong somehow. Guarded. Ryan broke the silence first. He spoke in Velari, the words flowing easily after years of study. "Greetings, Your Majesty. I hope you are well." The formal words, the perfect pronunciation, surprised Zara. Her scales flashed silver for just a moment before she controlled them. He had learned her language, truly learned it, not just basic phrases. "Your Velari has improved greatly," she replied in English, matching his formality. "I am well, and you?" Ryan moved closer, stopping several feet away. A respectful distance, as well as can be expected. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. 5 years of words unsaid pressed between them. The calm, polite conversation felt wrong, like wearing clothes that no longer fit. "How have you been?" Zara asked quietly. The question was simple, but her tone carried 5 years of unspoken meaning. Really? How have you been? Ryan looked out at the stars, then back at her. Honest. That was what she had always valued. He would give her that, at least. I thought about you often. Watched your accomplishments from afar. You've done amazing things, Zara. I'm proud of you. If that's allowed. Her scales shimmered, betraying emotions she was trying to hide. Allowed. As if there were rules about who could be proud of whom. It's allowed, she said softly. And I followed your career as well. Your research on xenotechnology has become required reading. You've helped build bridges between species. Bridges I was too afraid to cross personally, Ryan said, and the bitterness in his voice surprised him. Zara moved closer. Her scales were shifting now, violet to silver and back again. You did what you thought was right. What you thought would protect us both, did it? Protect us? Ryan turned to face her fully. Because from where I'm standing, it feels like I just spent 5 years running from the best thing that ever happened to me. The words hung in the air between them, raw, honest. 5 years of restraint breaking all that. Once Zara's scales went silver-violet. The color Ryan remembered from their messages. The color of hope and connection. I kept your patch, she confessed. All 5 years. I would take it out when the loneliness felt too heavy. When I needed to remember that someone had once seen me as just Zara. Ryan felt something loosen in his chest, a knot he had carried for 5 years. I kept the hologram of your garden. I never activated it around anyone else, but I looked at it. Often, missing you, missing what we had. They were closer now, drawn together by honesty and longing. Zara reached out, then hesitated, her hand hanging in the air between them. Ryan closed the distance. He took her hand gently, remembering Velari customs about touch. Her scales were warm beneath his fingers, textured and smooth at the same time. The contact sent electricity through him. I'm sorry, Ryan said quietly. I thought leaving would make things easier for you. I thought you'd move on, find someone better suited to your life, someone who wouldn't complicate things. There is no one better suited, Zara replied, her voice fierce despite its softness. There is no one else who sees me the way you did. The way you do. I've spent 5 years being the perfect queen and it's left me feeling empty. What do we do now? Ryan asked. The same problems still exist. The politics, the pressure. Your position makes any relationship complicated. Zara's other hand came up to join the first, holding his hand between both of hers. Her scales were glowing softly now, colors Ryan had only seen once before in those brief months of messages. I don't know what we do, she admitted. But I know I'm tired of letting fear and politics decide for me. I'm tired of being alone in a crowd. If you're willing to try to figure this out together, then I want to try. The doors unsealed with a soft hiss. 20 minutes had passed. They could leave now. Go back to their separate lives, pretend this conversation had not happened. Neither of them moved. I'm willing, Ryan said. Whatever it takes. I'm done running. Zara's scales shimmered through a rainbow of colors. Joy and relief and something deeper. Good. Because I'm done being perfect at the cost of being happy. They stood together in the starlight, hands linked. 5 years of separation dissolving in the warmth of connection. It would not be easy. There would be obstacles, opposition, complications. But they would face them together instead of apart. Can I see you again? Ryan asked. Tomorrow? After the sessions? Zara smiled. A real smile that reached her golden eyes. Meet me here, same time. And Ryan, no malfunctions necessary this time. He laughed, and the sound made her scales shimmer brighter. How had she forgotten how good it felt to make someone laugh? To hear that sound and know she caused it? They reluctantly separated. Zara had to return before her guards came looking. Ryan needed to prepare for the morning sessions. But neither wanted to leave, to end this moment. Tomorrow, Zara said. And it was a promise. Tomorrow, Ryan agreed. The next day, Ryan presented his analysis to the diplomatic assembly. It was detailed, technical, and completely professional, but when he looked up at one point, he saw Zara sitting in the front row of the Velari delegation. Their eyes met across the chamber. And Ryan, who had given hundreds of briefings over his career, forgot his next sentence entirely. He stumbled over his words, had to look down at his notes, felt heat rising in his cheeks. Zara's scales flickered with what might have been amusement. From his position beside her, Keshatar noticed everything. The way her scales shimmered when she looked at Ryan. The way she leaned forward slightly when he spoke. The way her whole being seemed lighter. After the session, Captain Helen Grant cornered Ryan in a side corridor. She looked at him with knowing eyes. "You stumbled during your presentation. You never stumble. And the way the Velari Queen was looking at you could have melted that viewport behind her." Ryan did not bother denying it. "Captain, Grant held up a hand. "Are you still in love with her?" Ryan looked his commanding officer in the eye. "Yes, I never stopped." Over the next week at Unity Point, Ryan and Zara found stolen moments together. Early morning meetings in the observation deck before either delegation woke up. Brief conversations during breaks in the summit sessions, carefully casual but filled with meaning. Late-night messages when they could not sleep, rebuilding what they had lost. They were careful, discreet, but not careful enough. People noticed. The way Zara's scales shimmered when Ryan entered a room, the way Ryan's attention would drift toward the Velari delegation during meetings. Small things, but enough. Rumors began circulating among both delegations. Some found it romantic, a story of connection across species boundaries. Others viewed it with suspicion. Was the Queen's judgment compromised? Was the human officer sharing sensitive information? During a working dinner, Ryan demonstrated his understanding of Velari culture by performing a formal gesture of respect to Zara's position. But he added a subtle variation that meant friendship underneath duty, something only someone who truly studied Velari customs would know. Zara's scales flashed with pleased surprise. The other Velarian attendants noticed. Some approved, impressed by the human's cultural knowledge. Others frowned, seeing it as inappropriate familiarity. The opposition came to a head during a diplomatic session. A hardline Velari ambassador named Velkarath stood before the full assembly. "I must raise a concern," he said, his scales dark with disapproval. "Our Queen has been close with the human technical advisor. Given that he is analyzing weapons that threaten both our peoples, we must question whether her judgment regarding human military technology remains uncompromised." The chamber fell silent. It was a direct challenge to Zara's authority, made publicly where it could not be ignored. Zara stood slowly. Her scales were controlled violet, showing nothing. But those who knew her could see the tension in her posture. "Ambassador Velkarath raises an interesting point," she said, her voice calm and measured. "He suggests that personal feelings might compromise professional judgment. Let me be clear. Every decision I make regarding our alliance with humanity is based on what is best for our people. Lieutenant Cole's technical expertise is valuable precisely because he understands both human and Velari systems." She paused, letting her words sink in. "As for personal feelings, I will not apologize for respecting someone who saved my life and the lives of my crew. If Ambassador Velkarath believes gratitude is a weakness, perhaps he should examine his own values." It was a perfect political response. Acknowledging nothing, admitting nothing, but defending herself and Ryan without seeming defensive. The chamber murmured with approval from some, disapproval from others. But later in private, Zara was shaken. She sat in her quarters, her scales dark with stress. A knock came at the door and Keshatar entered. "That was well handled, my queen, was it?" Zara's voice was tired. "Or did I just delay the inevitable? They're watching me now, Keshatar, waiting for me to make a mistake. Waiting to use Ryan against me." The old advisor sat down carefully. "What do you want to do?" Zara was quiet for a long time. "I want to be with him. I want to stop hiding. I want to be honest about what he means to me. But I'm afraid of what that will cost. And if you hide forever, what does that cost?" It was the question Zara had been avoiding. She looked at Keshatar, her scales shifting uncertainly. "Everything. It costs everything that matters." Ryan found Zara in one of Unity Point's gardens later that evening. She stood among alien plants, her scales dark blue. He recognized it as the color of deep worry. He approached quietly. "I heard about what happened in the session. I'm sorry." "This is my fault," Zara turned to him. Her scales lightened slightly at his presence. "It's not your fault. It's the reality of who I am, what I represent. But Ryan, I need to tell you something." He moved closer, concerned. "What is it?" "If we continue this, if we pursue whatever this is between us, it will get harder. The opposition will grow. They'll use our connection as a weapon against both of us. Are you prepared for that? Ryan reached out and took her hand. 5 years ago, I walked away because I thought it would protect you. It was the most miserable decision of my life. I'm not making that mistake again. This could affect your career, your freedom. People will question your loyalty. Let them, Ryan said simply. I know where my loyalty lies. With truth. With connection, with you. I'm done letting fear make my choices. Zara's scales shimmered through colors, emotions she could not contain. You make it sound easy. It's not easy. But it's worth it. You're worth it. They stood together in the artificial garden, surrounded by plants from a dozen worlds. And Zara made a decision, then crisis struck. Ryan's analysis of the Krathon weapons revealed something shocking. They used stolen Velari technology. The weapons had been designed specifically to exploit weaknesses in both human and Velari defensive systems, which meant someone had been studying both species for years. Worse, the theft had happened through a security breach in a joint research facility, a facility that human intelligence had been responsible for securing. When Ryan presented his findings to the full assembly, chaos erupted. The Velari delegation was furious. Their technology, stolen under human watch, had been used to attack them. Angry voices filled the chamber. Velkorath stood again, his scales black with rage. This is what comes of trusting humans with our security. This is what happens when sentiment clouds judgment. He did not look at Zara when he said it, but everyone understood the implication. The Queen's personal feelings for a human had made her weak, had led to this disaster. The summit was falling apart. Years of careful alliance building threatened to collapse. Human and Velari delegates were shouting at each other. Security moved to intervene before things became physical. Ryan stepped forward. He had not planned to speak, but he could not stay silent, not when everything was unraveling. If I may, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. His words were calm, measured, but carried the weight of conviction. The chamber quieted slightly. Ryan continued, Ambassador Velkorath is correct. This breach happened under human security. That is a failure we must own. But placing blame will not solve the problem. The Krathon use this technology to attack both our peoples. They want us divided, fighting each other instead of facing the real threat. He paused, looking around the chamber. 5 years ago, I made a choice to save Velari lives without considering the politics. Some called it reckless. Some called it heroic. I just called it necessary. Today I'm making another choice. To take responsibility for this failure and work toward a solution rather than pointing fingers. Ryan looked directly at Zara. She sat very still, her scales shimmering with silver violet. If my analysis helped reveal this breach, if my work can help protect both humans and Velari, then the circumstances of my connection to your people don't matter. What matters is results. What matters is stopping the Krathon from using our divisions against us. Zara stood. Her scales were bright now, determined. Lieutenant Cole speaks truth. We can spend our time fighting each other, or we can work together to solve this problem. I choose cooperation. I choose trust. And I choose to judge people by their actions rather than their affiliations. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of both Velari and human delegates. 5 years ago, this man saved my life and the lives of my crew. He did not ask what species we were or whether it was politically convenient. He simply saw people in danger and acted. That is the spirit we need now. Not suspicion, not division. Action. The chamber was silent. Then slowly some delegates began touching hands to chests in the Velari gesture of agreement. Humans nodded. The tension began to ease. It was not perfect. Velkorath and his supporters still frowned. But the immediate crisis had passed. Ryan and Zara had worked together publicly to defuse a situation that could have destroyed the alliance. And in doing so, they had shown everyone what cooperation across species could achieve. That night, Ryan and Zara worked late, developing countermeasures to the Krathon weapons. They sat side by side in a secure conference room, surrounded by data screens and technical readouts. The work was complex, dangerous, possibly unstable. But together, combining human adaptability with Velari precision, they made progress no one else could achieve. As they worked, the professional and personal blurred. Zara explained a concept in Velari engineering, her scales glowing with intellectual excitement. Ryan solved a problem using unconventional human thinking that made Zara laugh. In the small hours of the morning, Ryan stopped working. He looked at Zara, really looked at her. Her scales were shimmering softly, colors of contentment and focus. Her eyes were bright despite the late hour. "I love you," Ryan said. The words hung in the air, simple, true, terrifying. Zara's scales cycled through colors rapidly. Joy, surprise, fear, hope. She set down the technical pad she was holding. "Not the idea of me," Ryan continued. "Not the queen. You. The woman who carries impossible burdens with grace. Who remembered kindness from 5 years ago. Who makes me want to be better than I am. I love you, Zara." Zara stood, moving around the table to stand before him. Her scales were glowing now, bright with emotion. In Velari, she spoke words that had no direct translation in English. But Ryan understood. They meant cherishing someone's soul more than life itself. Then she kissed him. It was a human gesture, one she had learned was. The summit ended with a formal alliance against the Krathon threat. Treaties were signed. Military coordination was established. Ryan was assigned as the primary human liaison to the Velari military, a position that would require him to spend significant time in Velari space. It was the perfect solution. Professional, justified by his expertise, and allowing him to be near Zara. No one could question the assignment without also questioning the entire alliance. As the delegates prepared to leave Unity Point, Zara and Ryan stood together one last time at the observation deck. The stars spread out before them, infinite and unchanging. "What happens now?" Ryan asked quietly. Zara's scales shimmered silver-violet. "Now we figure it out together, no more running, no more hiding. We face whatever comes as partners. Partners." Ryan liked the sound of that. Not queen and subject, not alien and human. Partners. "It won't be easy," Zara warned, though her scales glowed with hope. "There will be opposition, criticism, people who try to use our connection against us." "Let them try," Ryan replied. "We just helped prevent a war by working together. We showed the galaxy what cooperation across species can achieve. Anyone who wants to challenge that can face us both." Zara took his hand, a gesture that felt natural now. "When will you arrive in Velari space?" 3 weeks. I need to brief my command, arrange transport, gather my research, but I'll be there. I promise." 3 weeks felt both too long and too short. 3 weeks to prepare for a new life. 3 weeks until they could truly begin building something together. "I'll be waiting," Zara said softly. They separated reluctantly. Duty called them in different directions. But now they had a plan. Now they had hope. The 3 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Ryan briefed his superiors, organized his research, arranged for extended assignment in Velari space. Captain Grant helped smooth the bureaucratic complications, running interference with anyone who questioned the posting. "You're a good man, Ryan Cole," Grant told him the day before he left. "And you're making the right choice. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose happiness over fear. Thank you, Captain, for everything. For letting me fly that rescue 5 years ago. For supporting me now," Grant smiled. "Just do good work. And be happy. That's all the thanks I need." In Velari space, Zara returned to her duties with renewed energy. She had been away for 2 weeks and work had piled up. But she faced it all with a lightness her staff had not seen in years. Keshatar noticed the change immediately. "You seem different, my queen." "Lighter. I feel different," Zara admitted. "For 5 years I carried the weight of duty alone. Now I have someone who will help carry it. Someone who sees me as more than the crown." There was opposition, of course. Ambassador Velkorath and his faction made their displeasure known. Petitions were filed. Questions were raised in the council. But Zara faced them all with calm authority. She reminded them of her 5 years of successful leadership. She pointed to the alliance with humanity that was already bearing fruit. She challenged anyone who questioned her judgment to show how her decisions had harmed the Empire. None could. Slowly, reluctantly, most of the opposition quieted. They might not approve, but they could not deny her effectiveness as a leader. 3 weeks to the day after the summit ended, Ryan's transport docked at the main orbital station above the Velari homeworld. He stepped off the ship and into a new chapter of his life. Zara did not meet him at the docking bay. That would have been too obvious, too political. Instead, she sent Keshitar with an official delegation to welcome the human liaison. But that evening, after all the formal ceremonies and introductions were complete, Ryan found a message waiting in his quarters. An invitation to the royal palace. To the meditation garden he had seen only in holograms. He arrived as the two suns were setting, painting the green sky in shades of amber and violet. A guard led him through the palace, through corridors carved with intricate patterns, past rooms filled with art and history. Then they reached the garden, and Ryan stopped breathing. It was more beautiful than the hologram. Bioluminescent plants glowed softly in the fading light. Pools of still water reflected the first stars appearing overhead. Paths wound between carefully tended beds of alien flowers, and in the center of it all stood Zara. She was not wearing royal robes. Just simple clothes, practical and comfortable. Her scales glowed in the twilight, shimmering through colors of joy and relief and love. "Welcome to my favorite place in the universe," she said softly. Ryan walked toward her, taking in the garden, the alien beauty of this world, the woman who had become the center of his universe. "It's perfect. This is where I come when I need to remember peace exists," Zara said. "Where I come to be just myself. I wanted you to see it, to share it with you." They walked together through the garden as darkness fell completely. The bioluminescent plants grew brighter, creating patterns of light that danced around them. Above, unfamiliar stars emerged in configurations Ryan would need to learn. "Tell me about them," Ryan said, pointing at the stars. "Teach me your sky," so Zara did. She pointed out constellations, told him the stories Velari children learned. Ryan listened, committing it all to memory. This was his world now, too. These were the stories he would learn to love. "I kept your patch," Zara confessed quietly. "All 5 years. Every night when the loneliness felt too heavy, I would take it out and remember there was someone who saw me as more than a crown." "I kept your garden," Ryan replied. "The hologram you sent me. I never showed it to anyone else, but I looked at it constantly. Missing you, missing this." They sat together beside one of the pools, their reflections shimmering in the water. Human and Velari, two people who should never have met, never have connected, never have loved. "What do we do now?" Ryan asked. "Really, day to day. How do we make this work?" Zara was quiet for a moment, thinking. "We build a life, one day at a time. You do your work with the military liaisons. I do my work as queen. And when we can, we come here. We talk, we share our days. We remind each other that we're more than our duties. It won't always be easy," she continued. "There will be times when duty separates us. Times when politics makes everything complicated. But we'll have this. We'll have each other." Ryan took her hand. "That's enough. That's more than enough." Over the following months, they established a pattern. Ryan worked with Velari military officers, helping integrate human and Velari defensive systems. He was good at his job, respected for his expertise and his willingness to learn Velari methods. Zara continued to lead her empire with the same dedication she always had. But now, late at night, she had someone to share the burden with. Someone who understood the weight she carried. They were careful to maintain proper public boundaries. In official settings, Ryan treated Zara with the respect due a head of state. Zara treated Ryan as a valued liaison officer, professional, appropriate. But in private, in the meditation garden or in quiet moments stolen from their schedules, they were just Zara and Ryan, two people who had found something precious against all odds. Keshitar became an unexpected ally. The old advisor taught Ryan the subtle meanings behind scale colors, the unspoken rules of Velari court politics. He ran interference when needed, gently steering conversations away from uncomfortable topics. "You make her happy," Keshitar told Ryan one afternoon. "I have served 3 generations of queens, and I have never seen scales shimmer the way hers do when she speaks of you." "She makes me happy too," Ryan replied. "She makes me want to be better. To understand more. To build bridges instead of walls. That is all any of us can hope for," Keshitar said. "To find someone who brings out our best self." A year after the summit, there was a ceremony dedicating a new space station built jointly by humans and Velari. It was called the Radiance, named after the flagship Ryan had saved 7 years ago. Ryan and Zara attended together, officially as queen and liaison officer, privately as partners. They stood side by side as the station was activated, watching the lights come on one by one. The galaxy had slowly adjusted to their relationship. It was no longer scandalous, just accepted fact. Queen Zara had a human in her life. The human liaison was close with the Velari queen. It had become normal. Other cross-species relationships became more visible, inspired by their example. Humans and Velari working together became common. The alliance grew stronger. At the ceremony, Zara gave a speech about cooperation and hope. She talked about how 7 years ago, one human had refused to let politics determine who lived and died, how that single act of courage had rippled outward, changing everything. She did not mention Ryan by name. She did not need to. Everyone knew who she was talking about. After the ceremony, they walked together through the new station. Engineers from both species greeted them. Children pointed at the queen with wide eyes. Everything felt possible. Ryan thought back to that moment 7 years ago when he had flown into a dying ship to save strangers. He had no idea that choice would lead here, to standing beside the most remarkable person he had ever known, to helping build a future where species work together instead of apart. Do you ever regret it? Zara asked quietly as they stood at a viewport overlooking the planet below. Everything that happened. The years apart. The complications. Ryan took her hand. Never. Not for a second. The years apart were hard, but they led here. And here is exactly where I want to be.